Pregame.com.
Welcome to Pregame.tv. Alongside Vegas Runner, I am Brady Kannon. Steve Fezzik, unfortunately not with us this evening. Just a two-man team here on a Tuesday. And we're talking college football, going right to the marquee matchup. The Miami Hurricanes, undefeated and ranked 7th in the BCS standings. Alongside Florida State, the Seminoles are ranked number 3 this week, slipping one spot to the Oregon Ducks in the most current rankings. This one is at Florida State in Tallahassee. And boy, this one has marquee matchup written all over it. A rivalry game. It ought to be a good one.
Someone's O has to go. That's
Exactly.
what they'd be hyping up if this was a boxing match. Listen, this is the biggest spread in college football history between two undefeated top 10 teams.
Yeah.
Never before has an undefeated team in the top 10 been getting this many points.
I know, absolutely.
To me, I got to ask myself, is it justified? Is it warranted? Is it the books expecting Florida State money? Or is it what the power ratings really reflect?
I think it's a little of both. I mean, you can make a case for Florida State. They've been crushing teams. Demolishing teams. Only one team has scored more than 17 points against them. Their total count, 368 to 91. That's their score against their opponents. Now, meanwhile, on the other side, Miami has been, beating guys by small margins.
Yeah.
And they had to come back late to beat North Carolina. They had to get a late score last week to beat Wake Forest. So I agree with you. I think the books are guarding against some of that public money coming in on Florida State, but I also think it's, you can make a case that it's warranted.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, if ever number 7 should be getting this many points that's undefeated, this may be it because of how Miami's been winning those games.
Right.
I kind of like that they had problems against Wake Forest and won in the end. It tells me they were looking ahead, but they had the talent, the calmness to get the win when it mattered. And when you look at this team, here's what I like about Miami, and I don't love as much about Florida State. I know how hyped up this Winston kid is,
right,
the quarterback. But at the end of the day, we can't forget this kid's a freshman.
Right.
On Miami, we're talking about a senior in Stephen Morris.
Yes.
I would rather put my money on a big game back in a senior than the pressure of a freshman, especially catching these points.
Well, again,
not saying Florida State won't win, but to blow them out is what they have to do to cover this number.
Right.
And I think this is a calm, cool, collective Miami team. And I may
agree
be a
with
little biased because I loved the Canes back in the day. Who loves you? I loved the Canes when I was growing up. But I too many points to give up, man. Too many points not to take.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, that played into my thought process here. The fact that they did not do well against Wake Forest last week because they were looking ahead and still come out with a W. They say that's a sign of a good team when you can play ugly and win. But, the fact that they're looking ahead to next week, that tells me they have a lot of sights set on Florida State. And, they're ready for this matchup. I like the fact that you're talking about the experienced quarterback, the experienced offensive line. Going to be an interesting game. We're going to go ahead and make it official. So we're taking a look at the Miami Hurricanes in Tallahassee on Saturday night, getting 22 points. This is two undefeated teams, number 7 against number 3, the largest point spread this late in the season between two undefeateds. Now, we're going to take a look at Florida State. They've been crushing teams. They have been beating people to a pulp. And I think that plays into why we're looking at Miami this week, because they have been just kind of treading along, beating people by not huge margins, and that may factor into the line here, why we're getting so many points. Now, you take a look at a rivalry game. Historically favors the underdog. In this particular matchup, the underdog has covered 8 times in a row and 12 of the last 14. And how about Al Golden? Do you think this guy knows how to get his players up for a big matchup when they're an underdog? As a double-digit dog, he is 9-1-1 against the spread and 5-0 if that favorite is coming off of a win. So we're going to go with the Miami Hurricanes here, plus the 22 points over the Florida State Seminoles on Saturday night. The Seminoles and the Hurricanes, a classic battle between two heavyweights on Saturday night. As you and I talked about the experienced offensive line, I think Stephon Morris's ankle is getting better every week. The running game is solid. I think they can keep Jameis Winston off the field, and I think that'll be a real key strategy to how they can get this done. I don't know if they're going to win the game, but I think they can cover the 22 points. Interesting note here, VR, favorites are bad in matchups like this. If you take a 5-0 or better team undefeated matchup like this, the favorite is 3-17 against the spread if the week prior they scored 49 or more points.
Makes sense because they're usually overvalued in the betting market if they're blowing teams away.
Exactly, and maybe the confidence is high. You know, they're killing everybody just like Florida State is doing. They had their marquee game against Clemson this year. They went in there as an underdog and just pounded them. Now they know they're supposed to beat Miami by 3 touchdowns, and they're pumping their chest up a little bit. Might be the wrong time to do it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you here. Again, I haven't moved money for different betting syndicates. I know that the numbers are just part of the equation. So I'm not as big of a math guy as a lot of handicappers out there because they don't always tell the whole story. But I do like to dig into the math when some of the final scores are misleading, you know, like big blowouts or real close wins like Miami's had.
Right.
When you really break it down to the advanced metrics, offense yards per play, Miami 7.3, Florida State 8.2.
Right.
Very impressive for both teams. Defensively, yards per play. Miami, 4.9. Florida State, 4.2.
Wow.
These two teams, even though one's been blowing teams away and one's been barely getting by to get to 7-0, their advanced metrics aren't that far apart.
Right.
So for me, that's a telling sign that the final scores are a little bit misleading on the Florida State side. And Miami maybe not the kind of team that's out to blow the opponent away. They start slow, and when you start slow and that becomes your style, it's hard to blow opponents away. But they have the character it's shown all season to handle the pressure, get the win, and that's what, at the end of the day, that's all that matters.
Absolutely. We'll see what happens Saturday night. We're going to turn our chapter to the NFL. Prime time NFL. We're going to do it with VR. It's his pick. He's up next. Stick around. Pregame.tv.